Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansi. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamerspro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we got a very, very interesting show for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, today we got a show for you guys that I'm going to enjoy doing, and I think a lot of you guys are going to enjoy it. As you guys know, Deion Sanders basically took over the headlines, maybe let's say about 2 months ago with this Colorado football team. They were the biggest story in sports, and everyone was following them wherever they went. Every Saturday, ESPN, Fox Sports, all of these guys would fly down to Boulder, Colorado to go cover them before their games. And Deion Sanders was a major money-making machine, right? Major money-making machine. And he created a lot of hype and buzz for that team because of the way that they were winning and how he was basically turning around that program. Because remember, the year prior they had only won one game. They had a 1-11 record, and this year they were already at that point they had already won more games this season than they had won their entire campaign last year. So there was a lot of excitement. But what happened? As time began to elapse, they were dropping some games that they weren't supposed to. They got embarrassed by, what's the team? I think they played against Oregon, and it was an absolute beatdown. They beat them 42-6. They were able to bounce back against USC. Then they won another game against Arizona State. But then something interesting happened this past Saturday when they were playing against Stanford, and I actually saw a bit of that first half, and I saw that they were up about 27 points going into the first half, and I'm like, well, there's no point in even watching this game because they already won it, right? And then I wake up the next morning just to see that they blew a 20.7 lead in a football game. And I listened to Coach Prime at the end of the game, and he was absolutely livid with his players and his coaching staff, and including himself. And he seemed to be beside himself at what was transpiring on the field. Now, we had produced a range of shows on Deion Sanders. We had defended him against people like Jason Whitlock and others. And to me, when we were producing those shows, I said at the time that the most important thing here is that even though Deion is generating all of this buzz, all of this excitement, there's all of this fanfare, around him, I said at the core of it is winning. I said as long as there's winning taking place, then I think he deserves everything that comes with it in terms of the hype and the acclaim and the praise and all of that. But if there's no winning taking place, then I think we need to pump the brakes. If you notice, I didn't produce a lot of content around it because I'm like, well, they're not winning, right? And I don't want to be someone that just covering a team just for the hype of it. That's what big media does sometimes with the Lakers. The Lakers could be doing good or bad. They're going to talk about them regardless. And to me, I think a team deserves to get discussed about if they're doing very well, right? So that was kind of my approach, my silent approach. So what happened? After they blew that, what was the lead? That 27-point lead against Stanford. The following Monday, various news networks were reacting to what had taken place, and ESPN First Take was one of them. Now, as you guys know, Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp had regularly been making visits to Boulder to see those games, speak to Deion and all of that. But when they were asked to kind of weigh in on what they saw transpire over the weekend after they blew that 27-point lead, Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharp absolutely went off, and I think they told the God's honest truth about what they saw. But before we even get into their comments, this video is brought to you by a brand new sponsor, Factor Meals. If you're like me or anybody that works at Dreamerspro, chances are you're a very, very busy person, especially during the lunchtime when you don't have time to go to the grocery store, pick out fresh ingredients, and come back home and cook healthy, delicious meals. Sometimes we're so busy that you just end up finding yourself making a ham sandwich or something like that, which isn't really ideal. And this is the reason why we are excited to be partnering with Factor Meals. Factor Meals is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. You can choose from up to 35 gourmet meals. Every meal is packed with premium ingredients, crafted by Factor Meals' team of culinary experts and designed by dietitians to ensure that every meal is packed with premium science-backed nutritional quality. Your meals are delivered directly to your door, and all you need to do is heat them up in just under 2 minutes. Then they are ready for you to eat and enjoy. So for example, this week, I think I'm gonna go with the Italian herb chicken. What I love is that under every single meal, you can see if it's a calorie conscious option. For example, this meal I just chose is the dietitian approved calorie smart meal, which is around 550 calories or less per serving, and also a protein plus meal with 30 grams of protein or more per serving. So if you want to give it a try, click the link in the description below or head over to factormeals.com/dreamers50 and use code dreamers50 to get 50% off. And remember, when you try Factor Meals by using the link in the description below, remember that you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do is want to play exactly what Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe had to say in response to what they saw take place on Saturday night or Saturday evening, whatever it was, and then we're going to come back and continue off the show. Take a listen to what they had to say here.
It's an absolute disgrace. Unacceptable. The fact of the matter is Colorado came into this game 13-point favorites, okay, and got outscored by a 13-point underdog, 46-14 in the second half after being up 29-0. They're now 1-3 in the Pac-12. Their defense has allowed the second most yards per game at 473.7, Shannon, and the seventh most points per game at 35.9 in all of the entire FBS. I believe that Deion Sanders is a coach. I think he's a hell of a coach. He needs some dogs, as he told us. He's about 7 or 8 dogs away, but here's the problem. The players got caught up in the shine their coach generated. And I'm calling out his son, Shadir Sanders, who I love and I think has star written all over him. But whether it was you or by accident, it was somebody on your social media team, you cannot have something being posted at halftime of a damn game. Tom Brady and your dad already joked with you about what you were driving around with and how you needed to be in the film room. Well, guess what? It is no longer a laughing matter. Y'all are getting your ass kicked. Show up, stand up, because your daddy, and to the players on that squad, your coach is as much bravado as he had, as much swag as he had. He was the best on the planet. Week in and week out, you knew primetime Deion Sanders was the best probably ever. Y'all ain't on that level. Stop acting like it and show up on the damn field and do what the hell you're supposed to do instead of getting your ass kicked on national television. Somebody got to say it. Go ahead, Shannon.
They lost this game because they're an undisciplined football team. 17 penalties for 129 yards. 4 times they got caught with too many men on the field. 17 penalties. At what point in time, because I heard Coach Prime game after game, we got to stop the penalties. We got to stop the penalties. We got to stop the penalties. And this is an undisciplined football team, and at some point in time, you guys are going to have to realize, you know what, we got to clean our act up. We're not good enough to overcome the mistakes that we keep committing.
And I'm sick and tired of people looking at prime time and acting like he was all flash, and then he just lived off his talent. He was incredibly disciplined.
Yes.
He was incredibly committed. He was incredibly focused. I'm seeing a bunch of dudes that are playing for him. They get caught up in the shine, and they got caught up in all the notoriety that came their way, especially the son who we both love.
Yes.
But come on now, you got to show up week in and week out and exercise that level of discipline. And you can't have stories out there about how you posted something at halftime for your merch on social media. At halftime?
At halftime, I believe Travis Hunter played too many snaps. Remember, Stephen, that he was out a month.
Yeah.
So he comes back, and you're going to play him over 100 snaps, and you're playing him at altitude. This is Colorado. This is not sea level. You're playing at altitude, and you're playing him that many snaps. And it impacted him, I believe, on both sides of the football.
Yeah, you would know.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say, and I personally believe that Stephen A. Smith was 100% on the money. 100% on the money, and they told the truth. And I think in moments like that, you got to tell the truth. There was a little bit too much twerking. Guys were getting a little bit too celebratory. There was too much fanfare, and this team hadn't even won. Like they hadn't. It's not like as if they conquered their season. They hadn't even gotten to that point yet, and it seemed like it started to become more about what was happening around them versus what was actually taking place on the field. And I think he was 100% correct. He even pointed out something about Deion Sanders' son about and the players, like, you guys are more caught up in the hype, in the flash, around the team instead of the actual results. So I think he was 100% on the money, and Shannon Sharp, I believe, was 100% on it. So last night, I was reading through the internet, and I came across an article from Bleacher Report that actually highlighted the response that Deion Sanders had to make to Stephen A. Smith in that loss. So I just want to read a little bit. The headline starts off saying, Deion Sanders, Stephen A. Smith right for ripping Colorado's loss to Stanford. It continues on. Colorado head coach Deion Sanders has never been one to shy away from criticism. So on Monday, when ESPN Stephen A. Smith called the Buffalo's demoralizing 46-43 loss in double overtime to Stanford's Cardinal an absolute disgrace, Deion Sanders didn't disagree with him. Colorado led 29 at halftime before being outscored 46-14 overall. Over the final 2 quarters and 2 overtimes, the Buffaloes entered the game as 13.5-point favorites on their home field against the Cardinal, who had lost each of their last 4 games. Friday night's loss set the mark for Colorado's largest blown lead in the program history, surpassing a 28-point comeback surrender to Kansas in 2010. Now, I want to read what Deion Sanders said. We're getting this from ESPN College Football, and it says Deion Sanders' response to Stephen A. Smith calling Colorado's loss to Stanford an absolute disgrace. He said, he is right. Now let's move on. So that's what Deion Sanders had to say in response to Stephen A. Smith. Here are my thoughts. First of all, what I like about Deion is that he holds himself accountable and he holds his players accountable. I also like the fact that he praises his players when the moment calls for it, especially in public. He's not one of those guys who's going to praise his players privately and then criticize them publicly. That's the kind of stuff you do that really gets players turned off, and it turns players off, because, like, wait a minute, you're only here to highlight things when I do wrong, and some people may call that tough love. I think that's ridiculous. If somebody messes up, call them out and say, hey, listen, you messed up. But if they do something right, give them their praise, because then they're going to know that you're fair and you are being fair, right? But it looks like if it's only negative, and you can never seem to point out when they do something positive, then we have a problem. So I like that about Deion. Now, my general thoughts about this is this. I think that this thing is becoming too much about the hype. I was one of the people that was on the bandwagon. As I said, I had never paid attention to college football prior to Deion Sanders even arriving there. Ever, never, ever. So for him to be able to pull in people like myself and others who were never following the sport to start following it for the first time, I think that's an excellent thing. I think the important thing, however, is that we're following for the right reasons, which means that we're following because there's actual substance. And what substance am I referring to? I'm referring to winning. I think at the core of all of this, winning must be at the center of it. I'll give you guys an example. Yesterday, we produced a show about Michael Jordan, and it was centered on what some tennis stars, it was centered on some comments that some tennis stars made about Jordan. Essentially what happened was this. They were going up to the various tennis stars and were asking them, who's the GOAT, outside of tennis, who's the GOAT of sports in your opinion? The majority of them said Michael Jordan. Now, when we produced the show, some people that reacted to that on Twitter, saying, this is what happens when Nike hypes up an athlete and blah, 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 blah. Some people said this is all hype, this is all hype, this is all hype. And I had to push back on them. I said, wait a minute. This is not just all hype. This is not just Nike's marketing. I said, what happened was Nike was nowhere what it was before Jordan came on. Nike was making sprinting shoes, cleats. How do I know? I read the book by Phil Knight. I read his book, Shoe Dog. So I know this for a fact. But then when they got Jordan, it totally changed the game. They now went into the basketball and now all of that because they saw that this guy was going to change the entire sports landscape from a manufacturing standpoint and a marketing standpoint. So what happened? They got Jordan, and then Jordan, because of the way that he played, his flair and all of that, but most importantly because he won, turned Nike into a household name. At the core of it, Nike became what it became because Jordan, not only because of the way he was playing, but because he was getting results. And MJ and the Chicago Bulls had an 8-year stretch where they lost no more than 2 games in a row. So Jordan was all about winning. And I think that in the case of this Colorado football team, winning needs to be at the center of it. It can't be about the hype or this one, showing off or showing that there's no substance there. There's no stuff, and I can't follow something like that. I'm sorry, I just can't. If there's going to be winning and real results, then you can sign me up. But if it's just about the hype and all of that, then I don't want to be a part of it. And this is the perspective of one fan speaking. Not saying that this is the correct perspective. This is just the perspective I have. Not saying that you need to have it as well, or I'm right or you're wrong. No, just my opinion. That's all. Not saying people need to feel the way I feel. So to me, I think Stephen A. Smith was correct in pointing out that, listen, apart from all of the fanfare and the hype, winning needs to take place here. This needs to be about winning, and those players need to ensure that their focus is on the winning. And now we're getting to the point where they're questioning: does this guy love the game, or does he like the game, and all of that stuff? That's not where you want to be, because with all of this attention, you don't want it to be centered on you or focused on you, and there's no winning, and it's just all negativity. Because then I think we begin to go down a road that none of us want to go down. So these are my thoughts. So what I want to know from you guys: number one, what do you think about the analysis that Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe put forward? Number two, what do you think about Deion Sanders' response? Number three, what do you think about the analysis that we gave today in the show? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Again, if you want to follow the channel, make sure you check out the Dreamerspro podcast that we have pinned in the comment section below. Catch you guys on the next one. Peace.